You look really good. Your sound profile looks excellent.
Oh, I thought you were complimenting
Been getting some
me.
sun?
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Alien Familiar RPG podcast. I am Clayton.
I'm Jordan.
Grab bag Gary! Kyle Perkins, hi. Hey.
Before we get started, you can find show notes at more at alienfamiliar.com. Email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/alienfamiliar. And if you would like to help us out with supporting the show, you can do so at patreon.com/alienfamiliarmedia, where any help you would be able to give us would be very greatly appreciated in paying for hosting costs.
Those of you who contribute, we love you dearly. Thank you.
Yes, I can say with confidence that I do care very much for the people who support us on Patreon. As Kyle has already alluded to, we are doing another Dicebag Disco episode, the second one. So apparently every 2.5 years you'll get a new one of these where we talk about just a grab bag list of random topics that we don't feel like we could talk for an entire hour on. So we're going to string these together and until we get done talking for an hour.
Man, we gotta do these more often. I like the rambling, bullshitting kind of episodes.
Well,
2 years is too long.
Well, I am sure that we will have some topics left over, and we can do this whenever you feel like.
We gotta stop coming up with such interesting, robust, highly varied, and truly consequential for this hobby topics. I mean, every single one is like a slam, wham, punch to your jugular vein of interesting information. And, well, maybe if we had worse ideas, we would have more of these little grab bag episodes. But for now, let's get right into it. What are we doing?
Well, the first item on the docket, well, we can go over these in any order that you guys want to. I will go ahead and say on here what all the topics...
Before you spoil it, how many do we have?
We have 6 right now. I could pull more if we needed. I don't think we would need 6 in order to get through an hour.
Let me make a suggestion. In the spirit of this podcast, we randomly roll for which ones we do.
Who has a D? What'd I say, 6?
I think we can probably find one.
I just wish we had a different number other than 6 so I could roll an unusual polyhedron rather than the one that literally everybody knows about and that most people believe is the only thing that exists.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a D6.
No, there's not. It's just common.
It's perfect.
I prefer to be a little more elitist in my dice.
D12s only? It's my dating site, actually.
Number 6.
Exploded.
Well, we don't have more than 6. How do you do antagonists who aren't evil?
Nice.
Because the stereotypical thing with role-playing games is you're playing the big damn heroes. You're out to stop evil, whatever form that evil takes. It's usually some big bad evil guy who is either in control of a vast army of minions, or it is some cosmic force of evil that you are trying to thwart its machinations.
That is probably the single most boring thing in all of role-playing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am so tired of it.
Yep, same here. That's what spawned this topic.
Alright, so what's our definition of evil, Kyle?
Well, evil is defined as profound immorality and wickedness, especially when regarded as a supernatural force. So, profoundly immoral and wicked. Obviously, you have to establish your morality trends, your morality scale, if we're going to go with our standard beliefs, our standard morality scale. We're talking unjust or just wanton killing of innocents. We're talking any manner of forcing someone to do a variety of things against their will, slavery.
So basically the actions of every single government in the history of the world.
Yeah. Like, take example, like you have a relatively impoverished but recently went through a revolution country, and they have a wildly popular and successful leader in charge, but he happens to want some more socialist policies. He wants people to kind of pay their fair share and kind of even the playing field a little bit, take from the rich to support the people who don't have enough.
Kick out the foreign oil companies and
right.
the big fruit interests and
Yeah,
such.
start to actually develop a series of logistical and industrial policies in their own nation that might reflect healthy growth. And you go in and you...
We got to take that guy out. That guy's clearly evil.
Let's put somebody we like in there.
Yeah. We're doing God's work.
It's never happened. That's all fiction, though. That's not real.
Do we have a D&D definition for evil?
Well, we have 3 of them. We have a definition for lawful evil, a definition for neutral evil, and a definition for chaotic evil.
Oh, so the example Jordan and I just went through, that's lawful evil.
Absolutely.
We've done that as a country many times.
It is methodically taking what they want within the limits of a code of tradition, loyalty, or order.
Mm-hmm.
The other type of evil would be those who do whatever they want or whatever they can get away with without compassion or qualms. And that was neutral evil. And chaotic evil is to act with arbitrary violence spurred by greed, hatred, or bloodlust.
So they consider a sociopath to be neutral evil?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would say I'd say neutral evil would be the definition of, or most closely associated with sociopaths.
Well, those are your 3 flavors of RPG evil, and they all have nuance and differences that this topic is not going to cover. For the sake of this...
You sure?
Well, for the sake of this particular topic, I'm assuming we're going to talk about how to make a villain that is that's none of those 3 things.
Well, the thing that, is the problem here is that all of these definitions are assuming a set code in society for what is considered evil in an absolute kind of sense. But any one of these horrible things that you mentioned, killing people, whatever, if you're doing it under the right circumstances for the quote-unquote right reasons, it suddenly looks like a good act, right? I mean, in D&D terms, you go into the goblin village and wipe them all out. That's a good act. If the goblins come into the human village and wipe them all out, that's evil.
Yep, because the paladin can cast Detect Evil and know with absolute certainty from his deity of lawful goodness that these things are evil, and just go to town just committing atrocity.
Yep. Red team, blue team. Thinking about all the horrible shit that went on during the Middle Ages between countries that, kingdoms did to their people, that kingdoms did to other people, all this stuff. I don't think there's a single nation state or similar construction of society that you can name that would not fall under the definition of evil. Can you think of one?
I fully agree with you on that. Nation states are, by most definitions, evil. They have to be evil because they have to be concerned with perpetuating themselves.
Right. If they weren't evil, some evil motherfucker would take their land and, hang them all.
Okay, so we'll look at America.
Fuck yeah.
It's a nation of immense freedom and opportunity. It's a nation where we overthrew our slavers in order to go and get some slaves for ourselves. But then after we got rid of that, in order to establish a place where little baby Madison, no, not Jesus, we don't like him.
Okay.
But little baby Madison can be born, and she can do whatever it is that she damn well pleases. And how can you call this nation, this great nation, evil?
I'd never dream of it.
But for real, though, evil is only defined by the moral codes of the majority in power. So most people operating this country, and a large amount of people living in this country, don't consider it to be evil.
Well, there's here's the Chomsky part. It's manufactured consent, right? Like, it's not like everybody deals with these problems on a daily basis and has to, like, wrestle with these things. It's cognitive dissonance that is constantly being reinforced in the population. And that's going to happen in modern day America. That would have happened in medieval Europe. That would have happened in Rome. I mean, the whole thing is perpetuating the mythology of the society. No one's ever going to be, the villain in their own storyline, and no one's ever going to be on, the side of evil. All the Nazis thought that they were doing the right thing, right?
Exactly.
So,
well, so to bring it back to the topic then, is that the simplest way to have your antagonist not be evil? To just have them believe they're doing the right thing? Is that like the simplest way to do it?
I think that's definitely a big part of it, and it's more a question of strategy than it is like outcome, right?
I would argue that it's not about making the villain think or the antagonist think that they are doing the right thing. It's convincing the player characters that, you know what, this guy he could be doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's evil, whether or not they view the antagonist as evil is going to entirely determine whether or not they can understand the point of view from the person who is doing these things, and whether they think if they were in those shoes, they would probably be doing the same thing. And that second one is the more important for establishing an antagonist who isn't viewed as evil.
Mm-hmm. I find this happening to me all the time in so many movies that I've watched over the last 10, 15 years or something. I find myself siding with the bad guy. And it's a coin toss, I don't know that Thanos was completely wrong. You know what I mean? He did it randomly. That was fair. There's a problem. You might have a case to make. The best example of this ever, though, in my mind, is Magneto. I mean, dude was kind of a freedom fighter.
The dude fought Nazis.
Yeah.
He was in a concentration camp. It instilled in him a deep-seated, in some ways, could be allied with Captain America's whole clique in the Civil War, right?
That's a great example.
That's the deepest comic book reference you're ever going to hear me make on this entire podcast.
Yeah, I mean, arguably the villain in Civil War is Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Fairly obviously, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, breaking that down a little bit further, obviously if your antagonist believes that the way he has to survive is by killing and eating the hearts of little babies, and he believes in his heart of hearts that he is doing the right thing, but he's, to every other human being in the city, a crazy cannibal. That's not exactly what we're getting at here. But if someone is fighting to prevent superheroes from having their real personas revealed and put into a computer database, that's the plot, right?
Yeah.
Because they believe that those databases are fallible and security systems are fallible, and it is a fundamental right of those heroes to maintain their privacy.
Let's not forget about S.H.I.E.L.D.'s plan to have the huge guns on all their flying fortresses where they could target superheroes.
I think we're confusing the comic book version of Civil War with the movie version of Civil War. I'm not sure which one we're talking about.
I don't know either.
I was talking about the movie.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because I was getting a little lost.
Yeah.
I was talking about a friend who explained to me once the comic book saga of the Civil War saga.
Okay.
But whatever, regardless, that's a little more like, oh yeah, I can kind of get behind that. And if your players, even though they are Spider-Man, they are paid by Tony Stark no, that's wrong. They're paid by Tony Stark to go and hunt down people who are potentially terrorists who are hiding within Captain America's clique of people who don't want to simply have their names registered into an extremely secure database. And you're working for the good guys. You can kind of see, maybe they're not the good guys. Maybe Captain America's not such a villain after all. Maybe Tony Stark's not such a villain after all. That's what we're getting at, right?
I think D&D ruins a lot with spells like what you were talking about.
Absolutely.
It's just like, oh, here it is. Here's the answer. Black and white.
Yep.
Proceed.
So one of the ways that you can do that in a game with moral absolutes is to have them go against a paladin who follows a different deity. Most ready way to do it would be to face off against a paladin who follows a different deity who has a slightly different ethos than what the cleric or the paladin or whatever good character in the party has, and just put the ideas against each other. So in D&D 5th edition, there are several different paths that paladins can take and clerics can take. One of them is of war. Like a cleric can take the war domain. They follow a deity of war, and they can still be a lawful or neutral or chaotic good character and still follow the ethos of this war deity. Put them against another, like an opposing deity who is also with the war domain, or not necessarily with the war domain. You could put them in opposition with a deity of peace and use that to as the fodder for the conflict of the game. With peace, maybe that opposing antagonist who follows peace is wanting to completely eradicate war, which most people would say would be a noble thing to do. But in order to eradicate all of war, you would have to do a lot of negotiating, and you would have to find compromises with a lot of very reprehensible things that exist in D&D. You could negotiate a peace with a vampire lord or something, or a lich or something like that. And the party cleric of war or the paladin sees that is a lich. I have to kill it. They go and kill it, and now they have violated or they have either violated a treaty, or they have forced the antagonist to now have to attack them because of the action that they did against this everybody agrees is evil creature.
So what's more evil there? A lich who simply wants to be left alone but given a large swath of land to do whatever it's going to do, or the paladin who has to kill the lich, thus ruining the chances of a treaty that would end war in the realm for eternity.
Similarly, I'm a big fan of eco-terrorist druids and rangers. I like that a lot.
Have we grabbed the bag enough on that one? Is there more?
I mean, I can ramble on about the nuances of evil.
I mean, yeah.
Well, do we want to give another example of, like, using the eco-terrorist example for how the enemy might be, or the antagonist might be non-evil?
Right. So, like, you got a druid. Let's say they've got some grove, some patch of forest, whatever. That's their realm that they're guarding, for the nature spirits and what have you. And let's say there's, a handful of, like, endangered magical creatures or whatever that happen to live in this thing. Then there's a bunch of farmers around who would really like to chop all those trees down and use that for, pasture land or whatever.
And the farmers are starving.
Yeah.
They don't have enough land.
It's fucking famine or what have you. They just keep breeding. That's what humans do. So, yeah, druid starts turning into a bear and jumping random people on the road, trying to protect, the last unicorn or whatever the fuck. Is that guy evil? I don't know.
So we've done lawful good versus, well, actually, the peace and war could both be lawful good.
Yep.
Druids would be neutral. Druid would be neutral. It sounds like these farmers, they sound pretty neutral in alignment as well. And the player characters, if they were given a choice, like, who do you think you would side with? Do you think you would side with the farmers and help them out, or do you think you would side with the druid in order to help protect this land that is sacred?
The move would be negotiation, but the real asshole DM would make it an intractable situation for whatever reason. You know, if you can manage to make that a zero-sum scenario and force a decision, that's where interesting table fights will happen.
Yeah, at the core of that, it is identifying a resource that two people need and only one person can use.
Mm-hmm.
That is the crux of finding an opponent isn't evil or isn't of a diametrically opposed alignment, which is often the case in D&D.
I mean, with the classes like Paladin that you bring up, for instance, I feel like those are like made for these kinds of dilemmas, because they've got, you know, the whole honor code and everything, and if they swear their fealty to some lord, even if the lord is doing something kind of shitty, are they going to break their vow and go against this guy? It's like the samurai problem, right? Like, you could be, you know, completely like brainwashed or single-minded, you know, devoted zealot. This is one of those things where like modern sensibilities get kind of weird when you're dealing with, you know, medieval society or something, because we're all ingrained with this individual, like, moral compass, you know, moral relativism kind of ethos, but that wasn't really how it was back in the day. There were lots and lots of people that would just like suck it up and do the thing because that's what you fucking do.
Mm-hmm. Would you run a game where the players find out that they're fighting for the bad guy, but make the bad guy's case so compelling that they don't feel like they could switch sides? Do you have any suggestions on how that might be accomplished?
Well, even like mechanically, if a paladin, if the DM's being real strict about it, and a paladin breaks their oath and all that kind of shit, they could lose all their powers. They could be a, you know, nth level shitty fighter. So there's kind of a self-interestedness to their holiness.
I like that idea, though, quite a bit. The idea of having your players find out they're actually working for the antagonist of a particular story, but it's got a compelling case.
That would be such a good reveal to clerics or paladins or whatever. It's like, turns out all detect evil is detect enemy. Your god's a liar.
I would say that would be something that you would have to find a way of putting a caveat in at the beginning of the campaign that is a possibility, because I've known quite a few players over the years who would get extremely butthurt if they found out, this detect evil is not actually detecting evil.
If you put in a caveat, though, it would ruin it.
True.
It would ruin it completely. Like, you just lay it all out there on the table as soon as you're like, it may not be as black and white as it appears. Oh, okay.
I think the only way you could do that without tipping your hand would just claim that none of those spells were in existence.
Well, yeah, I mean, arguably they probably shouldn't be anyhow. We talked a lot about fantasy stuff here, but I just want to say something about, like, from a sci-fi perspective. It's entirely possible to have, you know, alien antagonists in a sci-fi thing that are so dramatically different than us that you have all kinds of things that would be totally detrimental, maybe an existential threat to humanity, that to them would just be normal behavior and might even be friendly gestures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if an alien species doesn't really understand us and thinks that they're helping in some way, or even just shows up to make contact and, you know, spread some horrible disease or whatever that, you know, we have no immunity to, things like that.
Ender's Game, like the novel Ender's Game, is really good for that, because you never learn what the motivation for the aliens are, and the thing at the end of the first book happens to the aliens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, their whole wing may be so completely alien that you couldn't even articulate it intelligibly in our language.
Yeah.
So,
and the book of Starship Troopers does the same thing.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with moving on to the next topic if somebody else wants to roll.
I'll do it.
So if you roll a 6, we'll roll again.
Yep. 1.
The use of random encounters. Should they be used? Shouldn't they be used? When should they be used?
I'll go ahead and say they absolutely should be used. I'm a big proponent of the random encounter. They're so multi-purpose. If you need to just fill up an evening with some shit that is going to entertain everybody, you didn't have time to prepare or whatever, random encounter. If they start fighting, there's your evening.
Uh-huh.
If they decide to talk, then freeball it, figure something out. But random encounters are fantastic.
But there are some systems that just are not built for them.
Those are
Dungeons and Dragons 4th
systems.
edition.
Yeah. Yep.
Create a random encounter in that.
Mm-hmm. No, if your game system does not offer random encounters, then it is lacking in a extremely useful feature, in my opinion.
Do you think it is a like in a very story heavy game where like there's a very crafted story about what is being done and the way that things are progressing? Do you think that a random encounter just becomes filler at that point because it's not directly related to the overall story? It's not directly related to what the characters are doing. I feel like in some instances, if that's what you're going for, then the random encounter is just an opportunity to fight or just an opportunity to have something happen that doesn't have any immediate relevance or later ramification in the story.
I mostly agree. I think that if you've already got a good thing going, then throwing in some random shit just for the hell of it is just asking for inconsistencies and a waste of time and all that. I think that a random encounter is what you roll when you get to that point where the sidewalk ends, where you get to the white space in the Zen painting, you know. That's how you make your world feel like it really is this wide open sandbox and anything is possible. If 5 out of 6 people in the group are going along the main storyline and one guy's like, fuck this, I'm going to sneak off in the alley and go down this way. Well, time for random encounters. You're going farming for content. And a good DM will figure out some way, if at all possible, to make whatever happens relevant and fold it back into the existing narrative. Maybe it doesn't happen immediately. Maybe it's 5 sessions later. You know, somebody you encountered in that shows back up again. People hate improvising. You know, it's nerve-wracking. And if you can just let the dice and a chart come up with some shit for you, like, that's less cognitive load on you.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're both saying is that a random encounter to the players should not feel like a random encounter. They can be in there for all the reasons you've mentioned. They shouldn't be abused for the reasons that Clayton mentioned, but to the players, I think that they should not know they've just experienced a random encounter. If you, the storyteller, have a way of making that feel like it fits your universe, like it fits what's happening to the players in a plot line, like it fits the characters' desires for their lives, you can fold in any kind of random thing, tweak it a little bit in name, in visuals, whatever, and make it fit with whatever's happening so the players don't think, oh yeah, we're going between Safe Town A and Safe Town B, and all of a sudden we've encountered a skeleton army? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I definitely think if you roll something stupid on a random encounter, you should keep rolling till you find something that makes sense for where you're at.
I would say if you've done a good enough job ahead of time of setting up red herrings in your game, then random encounters become indistinguishable from anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The players will never know for certain whether or not that thing that happened along the road was in fact a random encounter, or if it is something that is hinting at something that's going to be happening later on in the campaign. And if you're a good GM, that random encounter is going to have something that folds back into the campaign at a later date.
Yeah. A lot of times players will go fishing for a random encounter. And if they do, I think a good DM realizes that player is trying to communicate something to you. They're trying to tell you that I'm bored with the shit that we're doing. This is not what I want to be doing tonight. And they're going to go find something fun to engage in. So, I mean, take that as feedback, really, and not necessarily negative feedback. They're not saying, fuck this game, I'm leaving. They're saying, I want to do something else in this game. So, work with that.
The only games I've played where I know the DM was using random encounters, I didn't find out until afterwards. And it's possible that many games I've played had random encounters and I never found out.
For a long time, I hadn't used random encounters. It's only been in the past few years that random encounters have come back into my games. Whenever I very first started, I really didn't put enough effort into planning the random encounters, and this is what I mean. Now, at the beginning of the campaign and like at points later on, I will create a random encounter chart or a random encounter table, and that is based on the campaign as I see it, the different elements that I see in the campaign, and it's just a random chance as to what parts of the campaign the characters are going to interact with at that particular time. It may introduce plots that are I'm planning out to happen months down the line, or it may literally just be a red herring that is just there to be filler. And the players, so far, none of my players have said anything about like identifying that random encounter. That was a random encounter that really didn't feel like it had any meaning.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, what was the game that it seems like you trailed off? You were going to say there was some game that had random encounters, or did you say that there hasn't been?
No, the only times I've played a game that did, I didn't find out until afterwards.
Oh.
And the one example that comes to my mind is your Apocalyptia Cosmic Armageddon game, where anytime we encountered some cultists or a demon bat that spewed black shit that came out of a dead dude's corpse, like anything like that, some of it was your flavor, but a lot of times as a player, you randomly rolled cultists. Cultists roll up to the highway rest stop where you're sleeping for the night, and they sneak up on you. Is this a random thing? Probably not. There's probably a fucking cult in the area sacrificing people. We gotta get the fuck out of here. Like your brain, the player's brain, starts to extrapolate and piece together their own puzzle based on whatever encounter that's been rolled. And you don't have to do that job as a DM. The players will do it for you.
Well, there weren't any cultists in that area before I rolled the random encounter, but there sure as shit were after I rolled.
Right, but you didn't say that, and it didn't seem...
There's a blank spot on the map.
Yeah.
I filled it in with some cultists.
It didn't seem like it was something you just pulled out of your asshole. It was...
No, I pulled it off the chart.
It was that coat on a chair in a dark room that makes your sleeping or sleepy brain think, is that a person standing there by my bed?
For the record, every Apocalyptia game I've ever played, except for the last space one, had a fuck lot of random encounters in them. I mean, the whole course of a narrative of a campaign can be steered and shaped and informed by a series of random encounters. You remember that fucking knight dude that hung out with you guys in the factions game for a while that was like leading the
Joppa
SCA guys? Yeah. That guy came out of a random encounter, and that was an NPC that came back for like, what, 8 or 10 sessions or something like that. He was there a bunch. It's great. It's such good creative stuff.
And that particular example is good because it wasn't a fight. It was literally a random thing that we encountered, and we could interact with it in more ways than just pumping it full of lead or steel.
Mm-hmm. I love random encounters. You see this in the Fallout games. Random encounters that is you coming upon a fight between two other parties that don't even know that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get an opportunity. Do you just watch and see how it shakes out? Do you pick a side? Like, do you try to mow them both down? What do you do? It's cool. Use them.
So I want to ask you both a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the past 7 days, have you had random encounters in real life? Because this question came to me, and I was like, I started thinking about it, and I was like, how many days have I not had a random encounter in the past 7 days? I don't think I've had a day that didn't have a random encounter.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen somebody that I knew that I didn't expect I was going to see, or had an interaction with someone I will never see again. And it was fun in the time. We shared a moment and joked, and it's over, and it added something to my day that I hadn't planned, and at the end of the day, I'm glad I had it.
Every single time somebody flips you off in traffic, or you flip them off, anytime you are walking down the street and somebody has a, like, funny conversation with their friend, you know, you're walking down and you just kind of hear, like, and then I threw a fucking chair at her, like, anything like that. That's a random encounter. Today I was putting air in my tires at the edge of my driveway, and a woman walking her dog walked by and was just like, is everything alright? You need any help or anything? And I looked at her, and I could tell in that moment that she knew shit about cars. And if I needed help, I could have been like, actually, and she would have helped me out. But I didn't need help. I was just putting air in my tires, so I thanked her, and I'll probably never see her again. Yeah, it's awesome.
Last night, at probably 2 a.m, I couldn't sleep, and my bed is right up against the window. I'm on the second story. And every now and then, I just kind of look out the window, look at the stars, whatever. So I live in a small town, and there's lots of foot traffic, even at 2 a.m. I hear somebody before I see them. Window's not open. This guy's loud. This guy's ranting and raving, just talking. He's walking down the middle of the road, and I hear him say something to the effect of, "You want to know what time it is? Time is right now. That's what time it is, motherfucker." Talking to no one. He's the only guy in the street. That's a fucking random encounter.
Yep. Anyone want to add anything about random encounters before we move on?
The way we're doing these topics, they're kind of random encounters. It's great.
Absolutely.
If we didn't have all of these filler segments where we, like, roll the die and whatnot, and we just kind of did this, but behind the scenes, we rolled a die, you might think we put together some kind of well-crafted series that kind of tied into each other with segues and various things. Fuck no, we're just rolling a die.
If that guy in the middle of the street was in an apocalyptia setting with me, though, I definitely would have taken a shot at him and looted his corpse.
Better safe than sorry.
Yep.
We got time for one more roll. Kyle?
There's one more of us.
1 and a 6 are re-rolls.
Doing this left-handed. See what happens. 4.
It's a good probability spread we pulled here.
How should you handle the retirement of a player character?
That's a good question.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, it means that the player character is no longer part of the campaign. Usually, this would happen at the end of the campaign, where you're just kind of narrating, I go off and do my own thing after the world has been saved or whatever has happened. Or it could be the player just has gotten tired of their character, and they don't want to kill this person that they have developed this emotional attachment to. They don't want to just let them die in combat. They want them to go off and have a life after the game. What do you think is the best way to handle that?
First thing that comes to mind is turn them over to the DM for use as an NPC.
Chances are the party is going to want to utilize that person in the future, even if they know that there's no possible way that they're going to be able to have that person in combat again. They're still a resource. That character probably has connections in the world.
Mm-hmm. And even if the player is completely tired of that character, some other members of the party might have developed, like, an attachment to, or in character or out, a strong relationship with that character of yours, and it might be something where you kind of turn them over to the player or players as a bit of a NPC lackey type. I guess ultimately the DM would still have a hand there as well, but, you know, give them to a player as a, what's the term? Not a charge, but a
hireling?
A retainer. Hireling, yeah.
I think that's probably not a great idea. If somebody who played the character is still in the group and doesn't want the character, makes a new character, and then their old character is still just lingering around, getting pushed around by other players, probably should just send that guy off into the sunset. I mean, that's what I did with Clarence the Cowardly Crossbowman.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed like the way to go with that. I gave you that character sheet though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do think it's a good idea to always give the character sheet to the DM in case he wants to bring him back as, an NPC or, some evil guy or whatever.
Or just somebody that the player characters encounter down the road. They depart, and the player characters know that they are somewhere else. You can give the player characters an excuse to go to that place and check up on the former PC, see how things are going. Now the player characters have somebody in that area that they can go and talk to, and might be able to help them with navigating that new area, or introduce them to important people.
The end of campaign version is a little different than all this. You had a character and it didn't work out for whatever reason, so then you decide to retire that one prematurely. I almost don't care what my character does in retirement. Like, a lot of people get attached to the, head canon and all that stuff of, how it winds up. But when I've thought about cool retirement stories for my character, I get sad because I'm not going to be playing that character to do those cool things. I'd almost rather just, leave it sitting on the table and call it quits.
Yeah, I've only had a couple of characters over the years who have retired at the end of a campaign, and those characters never go off and do anything. Mm-hmm. They retire to a farm. They go somewhere and they live in obscurity because their time is over and they've done the thing that they needed to do. They don't need to do anything else, and I think it would be a disservice to the campaign you just played, especially to the DM, if you are trying to make their life after the game better than the end of the campaign that you all played through.
I got this boring years out of the way. Time to do something interesting.
Well, after a long and successful friendship filled adventure, being a regular at your local tavern and experiencing a variety of wacky occurrences in this very fun comedy game we've been playing, turns out I'm going to have your character move to Seattle and become an extremely famous radio psychologist and go on for 10 more years. He gets married. Frasier does. Fuck his time on Cheers.
I was wondering where you were going with that. Cheers. Good reference. Have you ever retired a character, Kyle?
You mean like mid-campaign, premature retirement as opposed to the...
Either way.
Campaign. So definitely the end of campaign, I will never touch that character again kind of retirement. That's happened a few times.
You were bummed about Alkir and Abena. You were left very dissatisfied with that character retirement, even though you arguably had every single thing that you had worked for under your wing.
Well, Alkir is a character I'd return to. If he were to go and explore the beyond the edge of the world or do whatever, that's all well and good. But, Jimmy Hawk, he lost most of his friends and left town and kind of will probably roam the wastes until he dies. That's the end of that guy. I don't know if I've...
God, do you remember when you retired yourself in that Apocalyptia game?
I was thinking about that too, but we've talked about that before. Yeah, Kyle Perkins as a character is certainly never going to be returned to in that game. He's dead.
We all are.
Yeah. I don't think I've retired a character part of the way through a game. Either the game stops or I do. Ladies.
You've never just set one down and decided you want to play something else? You just stuck it out with, even when you didn't like the character?
Unless you guys are remembering something I'm not.
No, I guess not.
I don't think so. I've stuck it out.
I don't think I've ever retired a character mid-campaign.
Oh, guess it's just me then.
My track record is either the campaign falls apart before I get tired of a character, or a handful of times we've actually reached the end and my character could retire at the end of the campaign.
I have brought characters out of retirement, usually short campaigns, like 3 to 10 session ones, and then I'll bring them back for another one. That's happened once or twice. I I was considering retiring Alkir because I felt that he had reached a point having command of a flying airship and he was leading the coalition army, and I was like, well, what else can I do? Like, I may as well retire him and do something else so I don't fuck it up. But I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. Yeah.
I seriously considered keeping Talon dead. Very, very overpowered compared to the other players. And it was the exact opposite problem with Clarence. Like, just fairly useless character. Like, maybe an okay idea, but just didn't shake out.
You did tangle with a bunch of orcs who were in just personalities from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, though, as Clarence, and that was... Oh, no, that was the Marquis.
No, that was the Marquis.
That was the Marquis. Huh.
Yep.
Well, shit.
Marquis was capable of much cooler things than Clarence would ever be.
I'm surprised you haven't, Clayton, just because you've been gaming longer than me.
The number of games that I've been a player in have just dissolved. That is the vast majority of my gaming career.
I'll tell you that a lot of my high schoolers out at the D&D club I run for part of my job, they go through characters like crazy. They make a character, get bored with it, and retire it on the regular. Not all of them. Some have stuck with the same character for multiple games, which is, fine. Like they want that one character and that one character only. But a lot of them will make a character, play it 5 sessions, and be like, I'm gonna make another one. Like, okay, what about your old one? I don't care.
I would only retire a character if I felt like that character's story had been told. That's the whole reason why I make characters, is because I feel like I have a story that I want to go through and live vicariously. I could conceive of ending characters' careers before the end of the campaign, but it just hasn't happened. There absolutely are characters who, if the campaigns that I was playing in had gone on longer, they probably would have reached the end of their story before the end of the campaign.
And then you would have potentially picked up a new character.
Yes.
I'm surprised I haven't seen it more in games like D&D that have a static character progression where there's no way to like retrain your skills or abilities or anything. Especially with stuff like D&D where it's easy to accidentally take like 3-4 levels and pick the wrong stuff and have this like super suboptimal character compared to everybody else. I mean, granted, 5th edition is pretty much D&D in nerf mode all the time, but like I remember that being a thing that really annoyed me with 3rd edition, is that you get like 3-4 levels towards something, you get that prestige class you wanted, and I'm like, this is actually kind of lame, and I didn't realize what everybody else would have at this level, and maybe I shouldn't have multi-classed 3 times. Like, this sucks. So, I don't know. There's no shame in just walking away.
Well, in 3rd edition, I always planned out every single character up till 20th level. As far as their stats.
Plan ahead.
If we're done with this topic, I think we should move on to geek things.
Yeah, hey, real quick before we do, 3 years, guys. Clayton brought that up today.
Well, this episode will be coming out a little bit before the 3-year mark. The 3-year mark was for our recording of our first actual play.
Okay.
But here in April will be our 3-year anniversary.
Man, stay tuned for the big 100th episode, not including the actual plays. Be doing something cool.
Don't know yet what, but it'll be cool.
Don't tell them that.
We're open to suggestions.
Yes, especially if there are any Patreon patrons who have any suggestions, please let us know. Either in person or via other ways of contacting us.
Listen, you're giving us that money, we may as well dance the way you want us to dance, you know what I'm saying?
So, I have a couple geek things I'd like to start off with. The first of which is a video that is on YouTube. It is a deep fake in which it's taken from The Matrix, the beginning of it, and the idea behind this is, what if Neo had taken the blue pill instead of the red pill? And so they modified the footage so that he does in fact take, I think they just colored the pills different colors. So he takes the blue pill, swallows it, and then he wakes up and you're watching the movie Office Space, but Keanu Reeves' face has been deep faked onto Ron Livingston's face. So you're watching Office Space as if it had starred Keanu Reeves. And it is absolutely amazing. The other geek thing that I have is a topic I never thought I would be talking about on this podcast. I found a series of videos that I absolutely love on Pornhub.
Go on.
The channel is Ryan Creamer, Wholesome Pornography, with videos such as a room full of guys takes turns complimenting you. I hug you and say I had a really good time tonight. His only pay video is 8 seconds long, and it's I tell you I love you.
That's great.
Every video has this awesome title. They're not very long. They're like 30 seconds long, most of them. He's got some like actual porn actors and actresses like appearing with him in these videos. They're all brilliant. A stepdad wishes his daughter good night, then watches basketball.
There's a really old now, God, ancient video where somebody hand painted, like rotoscoped over actual pornography to make it look like cartoonish, innocent things are happening. Have you guys seen that video?
No.
I haven't seen the video, but I've seen like still pictures.
I mean, like playing an actual flute, playing a set of bongos, stuff like that. And it's like, like wholesome looking cartoon imagery rotoscoped over like the Dixon balls, essentially. But Clayton, have not heard of those. I'll have to check that out.
Ryan Creamer.
Oh, man.
That's perfect. All right. Mine is a docu-series on Netflix that is extremely timely. It's called Pandemic. I think it's like a 6-parter, something like that. And it's just going through talking to, a bunch of doctors, some people in a startup that are working on a truly universal flu vaccine. They're trying to get money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There's this one lady that is basically going around doing like pandemic awareness kind of stuff and like planning. I think she's like she's somehow involved in like the New York state government, I think. And anyway, it's pretty much just talking about how we're not ready and it's just a matter of time and blah, blah, blah. And this thing comes out and then coronavirus hits the headlines, and they haven't mentioned coronavirus. They've talked about like swine flu and stuff like that, like, recent outbreaks of various sorts. But I don't know, maybe they do by the end of it. I haven't finished it yet, but if with the time it would have taken to have completed, all the post-production for this series, I don't think it was even a known thing when they finished this documentary series. So kind of cool, kind of creepy, kind of amazing. Watch it.
I bet those documentary producers are sitting around a table full of money right now, looking at each other going, we did it, guys. What a victory.
What was H.G. Wells' epitaph? It was like, damn you all, I told you so, I think.
Well, my geek thing is strange. More of a point of pride, I guess, but it is a geeky thing that's been consuming my time since the last time we recorded. I did some research trying to figure out the naval squadron where a coworker's dad was based. He flew A4 Skyhawks in Vietnam, and I have a picture that shows the aircraft carrier on an airplane in the background written on the side, and on the front of it is a 3-number designation for that aircraft. That is just a simple call sign that's usually 2 letters and 3 numbers. I do not have the letters. I just had the 3 numbers. And with those two pieces of information, plus knowing roughly when this guy's father was flying and stationed on a carrier, I was able to track down the exact bureau number, and which is a serial number of the aircraft that he flew, and tracked it a sale to the I don't remember now, Malaysian Air Force, something like that, and then it was retired there and brought back to the U.S. and registered as a civil aircraft and then sold to a museum. And basically the scene from It's Always Sunny where they have the Pepe Sylvia scene, where Mac and Charlie have the pegs in the wall with strings connecting them, and he's just like, Pepe Sylvia, he's getting all the mail, and he's going there, and he's got the bureau number of the A4 Skyhawk that's on the USS Independence in 1968, but in 1967, that 3-letter code was given to a different aircraft that was transferred to the Oriskany, and that was me for 2 weeks, figuring this shit out. It was a lot of fun, though. That's all I got.
All right, guys. What do you say we stop this bullshit and roll some dice?
Maybe we should, yeah.
Wait, Clayton, get one too. Clayton, get one. We all gotta go. All right, guys, let them go at the same time.
3, 2, 1, shoot. We got an 8.
This has been a production of Alien Familiar Media. You can find past episodes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. This production is protected under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivatives license. Music for this episode is Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale and can be found at freemusicarchive.org.